The word cancer is packed with dynamite. It blows everything out. I remember when we attended a show in one of the studios. I guess it was the CBS studios. And there were a lot of fires around this. And I saw mom, she was not feeling well. But she was a strong woman. She never ever complained about anything. But I saw her. She was finding it difficult to breathe. So the next day, she still wanted to go to the office, to the studio. And mom loved getting out and just to see me eat. She never would eat, but she wanted to see me enjoy my food. So we were sitting in a restaurant and I looked at her and I said, Mama, you're not looking good. And she sort of joked. She says, am I not looking beautiful to you? What happened? Something's happened to your eyes? She was joking, trying to make light of the situation. I took her immediately to the hospital. And that was the beginning of a long journey. We call it my faith journey. And we were there at the hospital, and I'm calling up the studio. I said, I'm going to come now. Carried on, and then they did a blood test, all that. And then later on, I informed you, Rachel and Aaron. I didn't know, but then we were in a hospital room when a whole lot of doctors and nurses came, and I suspected something was not right. And then I think the news was given to us. They said, you've got cancer. That shook me. All of you were there. Now let me not only give my feelings, express my feelings. What were your feelings? What was Aaron and Rachel's feeling at that time?
Yeah. Well, first, I'll give credence to Aaron and Rachel. They're not here, but just because they're not present doesn't mean that their love and how they fought for mom wasn't a part of this journey. But I'll talk from my perspective and say those words, cancer, it brought me down to my knees, literally and figuratively. And if you want to talk about being helpless as a man, that was the most helpless I have ever felt. As a son, you will do anything to take away your mother's pain. And you are given this diagnosis by doctors you don't know. And they're saying, your mom has cancer. And I'll never forget mom's eyes. The look of desperation and fear. These are real things. I think a lot of times we like to put a pretty ribbon on cancer. Yeah. It's a very debilitating disease, and it was scary. So all those emotions I was feeling, and anger. How could God do this to my mom? That was the initial response.
Right. And all of you were there in that room. And when you left, Mom asked me, why don't you go? I said, no, I can't leave you. And then somewhere on one of my cameras, phone cameras, she said, let's take a selfie.
I remember.
I didn't want to take it. Because I guess, as you said, the desperation in her eyes, but she was putting up a brave front, son.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't take a selfie. So she said, I can. And she says things like this. I said, I don't want to hear this, Mama. She said, this could be a picture before my hair falls. She said, sweetheart, cancer is a killer. We took the picture. And I said, no, we are not going to give in to this. And I was angry.
Of course. Yeah, and for you to
I
admit
was,
that,
pardon?
for you to admit that you're angry.
I was angry with God. How can you do this? My wife is young. There's so many other people. It was almost like, why don't you give cancer to others? People who are leading some different kind of life. Here we are enjoying our life together. We have a family. You brought us to the States. She was the architect. She was the hub. She was the glue that kept the family together. Why are you doing this? Whole night I saw, she and I, we were praying. And she was talking about so many things, almost like she was talking about what's going to happen in the future. But through it all, that night we prayed, we held hands, but with anger. You're talking about faith? My faith was shattered. In fact, I tore it into pieces. What on earth is this faith? I was angry. And I know all three of you, I guess the next morning you all were there. It was such an encouragement, son. Because as a family, Mom always said we are all together when we came. And all three of you were there in the morning. Tell me, now let me ask you, and that is, all three of you either would come together or meet at the parking lot. And when y'all would come, y'all would put up a brave front in front of Mom.
Right.
We didn't want her to feel, but she knew her heart for all of you, for me, for the family was so deep, so genuine, so caring, so loving. Tell us, or tell the audience, when y'all would meet over there, I'm sure, and she would tell me, these kids are crying, darling, but they're putting up a front. So tell us about that when y'all would meet outside the hospital.
Yeah. And just for context, Mom was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma initially that evolved to acute myeloid leukemia, another aggressive form of cancer. But when we would show up, Rachel, Aaron, and I, we would try to make her laugh. We would try to show that we're not fazed by this, that we're going to beat this. I didn't want to burden her with our emotions because she was already going through so much. And as soon as we would leave that hospital room to come back home or go for Starbucks or a snack in Olive View, we would just break down. By the flagpole, we would weep and sob because we were so terrified of this disease. And cancer is one of those things where, oh, it'll never happen to me, it'll never happen to my family. No, it happened, and it happened to us. And we felt all of those emotions, and we would just hold each other and cry, Rachel and myself, in those moments. And we had to put on a brave front, and now we had to be the caretaker for Mom, and that led us through the entire process. You know, I was very fortunate that the job I had at the time allowed me to take a significant amount of time off, and I was blessed to take care of her, to sleep in the hospital, and help her walk, help her do all of these different things, and I paid it forward to her. And so to answer your question, we would definitely put on a brave front for her sake, and sometimes to our detriment because we would break down. And
Yeah.
faith wasn't something that we needed, At the time, it was angry. It was anger at God, and it was confusion. But slowly but surely, you understand you have to go through these valleys, and God doesn't take you over it; He takes you through it. And having faith, even when it hurts, is a whole different dimension of faith.
Yeah, but we must admit, so we don't want anyone to think that we were left in that state of despair. We were there. We went through that situation not as happy campers.
Right.
And if anyone, I mean, as we said, my faith journey is not to elevate ourselves, but it's to tell the people, you may have gone through it, you may be going through it, or you will be going through it. Here's an example. Be real. God is not a God who compels you, who puts, who forces you into things. He wants to extend His love, even when we are not loving Him. And He doesn't discard us. He says, you will understand my love. That's why when you said He takes us through it. And today we can look back, the beautiful memories, and some of them are humorous. I remember the Olive Hospital. Mom was a commanding individual. She looked quiet. I remember there's this windowsill. It was winter time. And I was trying to make myself comfortable. She said, Sweetu, is that glass pane very cold? I said, no, it's okay. What do you mean it's okay? She called the nurse. And she said, my husband is having a problem. And the nurse said, okay, I'll get him a blanket. And she would take care. And that was a time when we spent a lot of time together.